Chapter 3. The Stage of Great Farce. Planet Terra resembled the Earth, but it was considered a holy land and living on it was prohibited. Its natural environment was ideally controlled by artifacts around the planet, and so it was every bit as beautiful as one would expect from a holy land. The only artificial building there was a large conference hall where the Renza Federation allies gathered on the smallest continent. Moreover, the facility was built underground so it couldn't be seen from above. Only facility management staff were stationed there, and it was impossible for the staff to go out. The counselors and attendants of each country came there by transfer gate from the outer satellites. There were 5 transfer gates, and trustees and officials came and went using the gate for the state to which they belonged. They wore robes dyed in the color of each of the 5 families. The hall led towards a huge cylindrical conference center. There were 50,000 counselors for each country. The seats were divided into honeycomb blocks, and each appeared from a short distance transfer gate. The attendants prepared their materials and refreshments and gathered to chat with each other after preparing for the meeting. "Can we get this over with? I'm tired of waiting for this farce of a meeting to being." Prince Misue Namiwara Suire, the 3rd prince of the Suire kingdom, said as he drank a drink made by mixing fruit liquor with carbonated water. 2 monitors came up beside him. "It's your duty as a counselor. You should be honored to come here." Prince Ratsuka Akino Kaisen, the 6th prince of the Kaisen kingdom, said with a serious look. "Yes, but we already know what will happen. So I understand his feelings." The young man on the other monitor was Jitsuki Run Kahaku, the 10th prince of the Kahaka kingdom. Each had the distinctive appearance of their country. They heard a sound similar to a bell. Cling! Clang! It is time for the puppets to do their dance. 10 people in gorgeous robes came out and got on 5 pedestals in the middle of the room. They were the current governmental leaders and their candidates for succession. "Well then, let this kangaroo court of a meeting begin," Misue said. He stood up and the other counselors all stood up with him. They headed to each pedestal and corrected their posture. Then, dawn! A big taiko-like drum sounded. Everyone bowed to the pedestal. "In the name of the top 5 counselors, we declare this meeting of the Great Council of the Renza Federation shall be started," the chairperson said. Everyone sat down. "Well, what's on the agenda this time?" asked an elderly man with green hair. He was the king of the Green Spirit Kingdom, Suiten Hayaka Suire. "We have no choice but to talk about the obvious matter at hand," the cow representative, Ranga Baruamiru Sauka, said, remarking on the situation with Sena. She was somewhat different from the rest of the people. Her ears were red leaves, and her toes looked like twigs. She had half a fairy-like figure. "Yes, I suppose you're right," the king of the Fire Spring Nation, Hakuten Mishiro Kaisen, said. "There's nothing to talk about. Xianvi is clearly a godly knight and is clearly the founder of our humanoids. He belongs to us regardless of who found him and must be turned over," Maki Kashiyu Kigioka said. Unlike the others, he was merely a stand-in until Jayakiran took her position. "Now, what about matter of the applications for abandonment inheritance rights? Well, I know I would personally love for that pretty little witch queen to take your place, but I can see why you would be against that, Kigioku." Ahahaha. Enten Shinshu Kaisen, a man with brown skin and bright red hair, next to the king, said. "What a crude name. Is that your nation's official way of talking about our future queen?" "I am simply trying to praise you. You're doing such a great job. But the rest of us want our daughters welcomed back as heroes." "Yes, I agree. Now let's get back to the subject at hand." The others nodded. The ship will be held onto by the Cow Nation. Its crew will be assigned to 2 people from each nation. A big applause echoed in approval. "Geez, this is such a farce," Misue thought. "Welcome Sena Yamada." For Sena, who was accustomed to the luxurious hotel on Reception, this new place he was brought to was narrow and shabby. It had no decor anywhere and seemed like a behind-the-stage area. A giant man who seemed like he could be a professional wrestler stood up from a desk of a simple but heavy construction. His presence also made the room feel even smaller. This was an office, but it felt like a waiting room. Of course, an office needed no decorations to be functional, but it was clear from this room that the way the Receptions budgeted on decor for guests was very different from how they budgeted for themselves. "Sena, This is my father, the general manager of Reisepshi. Hello, I am Akishito Reisepshi. Hello, I am Seina Yamada. They shook hands. It felt like Seina was having his hand grasped by a strong baseball glove. Please sit. Get comfy. There was a simple sofa, and that was basically it. Although it seemed that the whole wall was a monitor. I'm sorry, I know this room is a bit small. Oh no, I like it. It's calming. I'll come back for you when this is over. Maya put tea in front of the two, bowed and left. I'm glad you came, Seina. I want to talk a bit. Okay. Even though Seina was being handled as a guest, he was not sure why the general manager of a planetary scale facility would take the time to talk to him. Have you had sex with my daughter, Maya, yet? Piffed. What? Seina spit out his tea. So you haven't. Well, that's all right. She's still pretty young. Perhaps you prefer a seasoned woman? There's no rush. Take your time. I just got married. Yes, and now that you have those 4 women, it's time to think about the next candidates. I heard your home planet of Earth was monogamous. But as you're aware by now, things are different up here in space. Even so, I'm not about to have an affair or start such a relationship. I can't believe you'd encourage me to. You're her father. Yes, but our mission is to curate the finest genetic and cultural heritage. Curate what now? Through Cedo, we have been given much of your cultural information. Like other planets, it seems that political marriage was also once done on the Earth to maintain power. That's true, but that was only in special cases. And you're not a special case? And I thought you'd be more aware than that. Haha. Well, I guess you're right. Marriage strengthens the power structure. In our case, it's the difference between creating dancers with great talents or incompetent ones. I won't back down but won't force you to do anything either. Just be conscious of it. We expect any offspring you may have with our family to be prepared to become dance princesses. Learning the skills and the training and giving them to a successor is the duties all dance princesses must uphold. Even so, I'm a bit clumsy, and even if I did think about it, I don't think my descendants would have any artistic talent. Are you kidding? Your biased probability is a wonderful qualification and should lead to a mind perfect for it. And if you don't like Maya, you can have her other sisters, or even Mikihi. Would you like that? What? Isn't Mikihi your wife? Mikihi has 9 children, but only 2 of them were conceived with me. Seina had been in space for a few years now. He knew that ethics here were different from on Earth, but he had never heard of such an extreme example like this so far. I and Mikihi think that it is easier to express ourselves as comrades, partners, rather than as a married couple. Moreover, we're best friends. That is an odd concept for me to consider. Well, you should start. Do you think you will be able to stay in your cultural bubble forever? I hope you don't mind me rambling, but I think what I have to say may be of use to someone in your position. Culture is a special thing that can only be created by existential people with advanced intelligence, but it is also a mirror of those people in a sense. The main desires of those people, their appetites, their libido. There are all sorts of combinations you can achieve with those factors, and as such there are all kinds of diverse cultures. I agree. Well, just like how cooking methods and food ingredients and seasonings preferences vary in the galaxy, there are also a tremendous number of types of sexual norms. However, your appetite is for your own survival. For you, libido is only for maintaining the species and the results it yields, and so you don't see that there is so much more it can lead to than that. But what's the point? From the point of view of survival and population maintenance, it was just a waste of time and resources. Well, for one thing, it is a very useful tool for suppressing conflict. Thanks to you, Seina, I got a pretty rare glimpse at a planet's initial culture. On the other hand, I had to read about how various cultural foundations were destroyed by each other. Sometimes cultural destruction can be good. What about pirates? Daruma and Terrence Shank's cultures are completely valid cultures as well. Terrence's culture being valid. How can you even call what he does a culture? Seina got unusually mad in tone. Akishito remained calm. I don't pretend to understand it or think it's valid for me. It's out of my personal preference. But it's certain that it was valid for someone. The only person who probably understands it is Terrence himself. What about those who died because of him? Culture and expression are inherently wasteful endeavors. Things are accepted and rejected as they evolve. When you refuse to do more than the minimum necessary to live, it can easily mean death. But there is also no need for wasteful things and luxurious things, and therefore, people's way of thinking about culture is diverse. But respecting the culture that is there is important, and it's our mission on Reception to maintain those cultures, so we don't reject any culture. Nevertheless, I have no regrets about catching Tarrant nor crushing the Daruma Guild. Well, if that was your choice, Sena, I will not deny the validity of that idea. But can it be said that it was really your choice? Huh. In the first place, the fight against pirates wasn't started by your will now, was it, Sena? Seto Kamiki Jirai-sama saw your abilities and decided to use you, and so did Eri Masaki-sama and Mikami Kuramitsu. And they instilled their values and morals in you. In other words, you are like their tool. No? Do you ever decide your ship's route? Do you ever have a choice in what you do? Do you ever exercise your own will? That's true that I don't, but I chose the possibility of doing what they told me. It was better than any other option I had before that. He felt he had only one single path to take until he met with a main, and it was probably a path with a very bad ending. But nothing is done because of your decision. Xianvi, Kamadake, the ladies who are around you, their influence on you is too strong. It is unusual for individuals to have all the say in all things, but you are completely guided by others. Sena thought about it. It was even because of Hakuren's actions that he was there getting the speech in the first place. Of course, initially, even though you had no power in your choices, the choices made for you were mostly in your favor, but now it's not. That's true, but that was what Kisu had also been trying to tell him. But honestly, Sena hadn't yet thought about it any further yet. Even if you choose not to do anything about it in the immediate future, I think that it's about time you think about it, especially because Renza is far more chaotic than the Galactic Federation. Hakuren could easily get you wrapped up in warfare. But I have no basis on which to judge what she's doing. Then here's a question for you. How do you gather information and make your own judgments? What do you want me to do, Akashido? Whoa. Geez. This is the prime example of the evil effects of the GP. Evil effects? The GP is a passive organization dealing with incidents as they happen. Of course, there are positive aspects in crime prevention, but that's generalized towards crime. It's not versatile. For someone like you, Sena, who is going to be wrapped up in political situations, you need to learn to exercise good judgment. So what you should do first is judge yourself, find your own purpose, and keep it in mind. I'm telling you this because my family collects cultures. I want to preserve their diversity. Even though you think other cultures might be incompatible, I want you to see that there may be ways that they are. I guess you're right. You're still young, so I understand that you are still pretty quick to think that differences can be immediately rejected, even those of your enemies, but you should learn to be more flexible and open to discussion. It can clear up things which are cloudy, and it's also important to have fun. I will try, but it will take time. Sena, in your case, you're going to find that there are often problems where there is not that time you speak of. Oh, but there is one thing you can do right now. What is that? I would like you to have sex with Maya. Or one of my other daughters or Makihi. For the first time, I recommend Makihi. No, I'm still married, having relationships with other people. There's a phrase, eating a cold meal is a man's shame. Anyways, whatever you do, you should negotiate it with your wives. It was 3 hours later that the result of that meeting was conveyed to Kariko. Once again, they gathered on the veranda while listening to Makihi. Fuku and Aka stayed in the living room as usual and enjoyed playing. Dee was eating curry on the terrace. She was only eating a small plate, but the smell of drifting curry overpowered the smell of the tea they were drinking. So, they're making an anti-pirate unit incorporating Sena? I can't say I'm surprised. That's the same thing that happened with the GP. And unfortunately, their position on the matter is not that strong. So, we begin to operate in the form of a small experimental unit. The Cow Nation seems to be in charge of providing equipment for it. They watched as Renza sent a lot of their humanoid weapons to the area around the ship. I know they're here to make sure pirates don't try and attack the ship, but it seems like they're just setting it up so they can capture Sena and take ZINV for themselves if things get bad or take it by force if we don't hand it over. Neju said. Well, If that happens, then we will storm them and get him back. As the owner of Reception, I can't let you do that. I can't allow you to take any action that will disrupt the peace of my customers, Makihi said. But you facilitate a ton of things that do just that. Wow, for an entertainment planet, Reception is a powder keg, and it won't be amusing when it explodes. Luckily, this is a place where fire is prohibited. Still, I'd like to ask serious approval on what my husband discussed with Sena, Makihi said, putting gasoline on the fire. Sena is not a stallion. Didn't you just undergo a political marriage? I don't think that argument works. Besides, which one of you is going to go first? Is it going to be you, Kariko? How about you, Miki? What about Tsukiko? Hey, how did my mother's name get dragged into this? I know I'd like to. Amain. Miki, why did you go bringing up Tsukiko? Makihi watched them bicker. Ahahaha, how entertaining. Either way, it's dangerous to leave things in this state. You shouldn't prolong this. I personally think the situation with Fuku-chan being separated from him is more problematic than us now, isn't it? If this keeps up long enough, we will have to deal with Fukusama and Akasama being anxious. It could be dangerous to keep her from seeing Sena for too long. She could get anxious and take the Kamadake out to see him causing a riot. Miki, would you be able to do anything about that if it happened? Sorry, but Miki-sama, Kurchi-sama, and D aren't allowed to transform into Kabits here, Makihi said. Miki tried to do it, but only ended up wrinkling her eyebrows. I can't transform. Hey, how about you, Kurchi? I can't transform either. But how? It's an inhibition code that Washisama coded in. Please rest assured that when you are at Reception, the inhibition code will be active. Grr. Miki was upset. Then, if there's an inhibitor for Fuku, maybe Washa can lock down the Kamade's functions? Hey Miki, Kurchi, do you think can you stop the ship if she tries to move it? What is the extent of the inhibition code? Let's see. I think we may be able to manage it somehow. Fuku-chan is still young, so I think if all three of us try we can prevent it. Well, if that happens, please do that. Kariko looked at Makihi. And, just to be safe, we can't approve of relations between you and Sena, but Kariko stopped to glance at Amain. About things with Maya, I'll leave it up to Sena. Amain nodded to agree. I am aware that things with Maya are not going to be hurried either, and I won't force them, but thank you. Is that so? Kariko watched a monitor with the scenery outside. The extraordinary number of mech sent by Renza made her realize how serious the discovery of ZINV was to Renza. Kariko accepted then that the situation of Seto assigning women to Sena would continue to increase. When is Hakuren's experimental unit scheduled to start operation? Since Reception is remaining neutral, will we have to move out even though it's her experiment? Kariko thought that if Reception would maintain neutrality, it wouldn't be possible to house them there. Once the deterrence units left Reception, Sena would definitely be out of her reach. Not forever, of course, but she didn't want to wait. Don't worry. The base of operations will be here on Reception. But you're neutral. Battle in Reception and similar acts are forbidden, but there is nothing wrong with using the ship as a base. Many hostages are housed here and many organizations hostile to each other. It is not uncommon to have rooms in the ship used as an office. In the past, pirates may have used some as their base. So can we also do other political activities here? As long as there is no conflict with the restrictions, of course the spaces available for rent are limited, and the rent is also quite expensive, so it is difficult to use as a base unless it's paid for by someone with a national-level budget. If the situation escalated, the operation might go full-scale, then it would be necessary to move the base from Reception, so there was no reason to put it here longer. In any case, I don't think we will need to rent for that long. Oh! How long will we have to stay here? Seto-sama told me it might be for a while, but I don't want to be here forever. Kurchi and Kariko nodded. If you're going to be here long enough, we will see about lowering the rates, but we will get the estimates to you as soon as we can. When Kariko became part of the royal family of Jurai, she got her own planet as a territory, and part of the tax revenue from it became hers to live off of. Personally, she had her own national budget of a major country on Earth. Maine, Ryoko, and Neju also had sufficient budgets, but spending money frivolously was something they all wanted to avoid. Maybe we can just use the Kamadake as a base, it's nice and big in there. Mickey said happily. Even so, the cost of anchoring your ship will be necessary, and considering the future expansion of activities, you still might need a base in Reception. The Kamedake itself was a top secret, so they wouldn't be able to bring outside people into it. Do not worry, this place you're in is being permanently paid for by Sito. Does it include meals? And toiletries? Of course, we even have outfits for rent that are in the budget. I'm happy about that, but it's a poor consolation prize from that old hag. Like Ryoko said, I'm glad we're living well, but I'm upset I have to be away from my beloved husband. The luxury just seems empty without him, doesn't it? Oh, Neji-sama, that reminds me. I got a message from Sito to give you. Because the wedding was stopped in the middle of the ceremony, you are not married yet. What? Everyone said, suddenly realizing that was true. They would only officially be recognized as married after their oaths were read and no objections were made. Then that also means we haven't been announced as Fuku's backup. Dee said with a firm tone as usual. Boy, that old hag sure has gotten us into a bind. If we can't pilot the Kamedake outside, we should consider camouflaging Mizuki and using it. Mizuki had no proper exterior of its own yet, and when linking with the Kamedake it would get in the way if it wasn't specially designed not to, so a special one was still in development while it remained mounted in the Kamedake. No, that's too much trouble, Mickey said, frustrated. The Kamedake is a small ship. We can always just place it inside of a large shipping vessel and fly it around that way. Unusually, Mikihi ignored Mickey. She remained silent. And Neju, who was watching her, quickly realized something and had a bitter smile. Shit. What's wrong? Although they're very similar in character, this is still a huge difference between their experience levels and positions. Is that a bad thing? Mickey asked. Don't get angry. I didn't mean anything bad by it. Your proposal is the simplest and quickest as a solution. Even Reception has nothing to say against it. Now do they? If that is what you wish to do, then as an official of Reception, I will not be able to refuse that request. Mikihi replied to Neju's question. Ehihihehi, really? Really? Everyone except Neju was amazed and stared at Mikihi. I am only one of the officers and do not have the full authority of Reception to say so, but I know that Sano was brought here against his own will. If I receive a formal return request from Kuriko, and you have the ability to safely do so without causing a panic, I must allow it. So, you were quiet on purpose. Mikihi, you communicate just like that old hag does. Oh, really? Mikihi smiled. You have to think about what you can do for Sano on your own while you're here. As Sito said, you're going to be here for a while. So, in a way we are being tested on what we can do. And here I was expecting that everything would be happily ever after the wedding, said Neju. Well then, I think it's best then that I leave the decision-making to my more experienced sister and her team, Mickey turning to check for confirmation from Kurchi. Kurchi nodded. Dee stopped eating curry for a moment to nod, then resumed eating immediately after glancing at Mickey. Amain, Ryoko, and Neja nodded in conformation. Roger that. Kuriko nodded and turned face to Mikihi. Okay then, since it seems that a suitable conclusion has been reached, I will issue a transfer key code to this place. Please use it to go back and forth between the Kamedake and this place. Mikihi bowed and left.